the first time Adrian Vale noticed his wife disappearing. It was a Wednesday night. Dinner had been quiet, like most evenings lately. Mara sat across from him, her eyes distant, her fork idle beside the plate of untouched pasta. The candles flickered gently, casting soft shadows over the walls of their glass apartment high above the London skyline. She smiled once, faintly. "You're thinking too loudly again." He blinked. "Sorry, you do that?" she said, her tone light but distracted. "When you're working on a case, I can hear the gears turning." He forced a chuckle. "You make it sound mechanical." She tilted her head. "Aren't we all?" Before he could respond, her gaze drifted to the window. Then, just as the clock on the wall struck 8 p.m., she stood abruptly. "I need to get some air." He frowned. "Now, we're in the middle of I'll be back soon." She slipped away before he could argue. He watched her walk out the door, coat fluttering behind her. He waited 10 minutes. Then 20. By the time an hour passed, he was pacing the apartment. He tried her comlink, no response. Her biometrics on the home network flickered out at precisely 8:07 p.m. and then, at 11:59 p.m., the system pinged again. Mara Vale home signal reconnected. She returned like nothing had happened. Slipping into bed without a word, he asked her the next morning where she'd gone. She smiled, that same distant smile. Nowhere important. But Adrian wasn't the kind of man who left questions unanswered. As a federal investigator for the Global Intelligence Network, mystery was his profession and his curse. By the next Wednesday, he'd set up hidden surveillance nodes across the apartment. At 8 p.m., Mara stood again, her movements identical to the previous week. She walked to the door, paused, glanced over her shoulder as though sensing something unseen, and vanished. Not walked away, not simply ceased to exist. The sensors registered no door movement, no heat signature, no quantum displacement. One frame she was there, the next, she wasn't. Adrian stared at the feed for hours. When she reappeared at midnight, the sensors picked her up just outside the elevator. Heart rate steady, temperature normal, no sign of distress. She went straight to bed. He confronted her again the next morning. "You left last night." "Again I did?" she asked, eyes wide with innocent confusion. "I have footage." She laughed softly. "Maybe your machines are malfunctioning." He leaned closer. "Mara, I'm not losing my mind. You're disappearing every Wednesday. Where do you go?" Her gaze turned sharp, almost defensive. "Would you believe me if I told you?" "Try me." She smiled sadly. "Then don't ask." That was the moment he realized something had changed in her, not just behaviorally, but fundamentally. There was a kind of static in the air around her, an energy he couldn't explain. By the fourth week, Adrian broke every regulation he'd sworn to uphold. He embedded a quantum tracker in her wristwatch while she left a prototype from his department capable of tracing matter signatures through dimensional variants. When Wednesday arrived, he pretended to be at work but watched from the building's remote surveillance hub. At 8 p.m. sharp, Mara stood. He felt his throat tightened at the feed, showed her walking to the window again, staring out into the night. Then she whispered something too soft for the mics to catch. A pulse of light flickered around her, faint but unmistakable, like a distortion in the glass, and she was gone. The tracker's readout spiked, then froze, coordinates appearing on the screen. Central London, Sector 12, Hotel Argentum. Adrian's pulse raced. The Argentum was one of the oldest hotels in the city, built before the AI reconstruction. Before the memory wars, it was rumored to be haunted by electromagnetic echoes from the old world. He grabbed his coat and left immediately. The streets below shimmered with drone traffic. He bypassed the autopods and drove manually, old habits from a time when machines couldn't be trusted. When he reached the Argentum, the lobby was deserted. The antique decor remained untouched. All velvet and glass and ghostly reflections. The clerk, a synthetic attendant with flickering pupils, looked up as he approached. "Welcome, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm looking for someone," Adrian said, flashing his badge. "Mara Vale. She may have checked in tonight." The attendant blinked slowly. One moment, its eyes glazed over, accessing the internal registry. Then, after a pause, it said, "I'm sorry, sir. There is no guest by that name." Adrian clenched his jaw. "Check again." "She's here." The attendant hesitated. "There are discrepancies in the system. Would you like to view the anomaly logs?" He nodded. The attendant turned a holographic display toward him. The logs showed repeated check-ins every Wednesday, the same time, 8:10 p.m., same room number, room 717. But the guest names were blank. Adrian didn't wait for permission. He took the elevator to the 7th floor. Room 717 was at the end of a long, dim corridor. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open quietly. The room inside was empty except for a single mirror on the far wall, floor to ceiling, perfectly reflective. No furniture, no bed, no lights. And then, as he stepped closer, the mirror rippled. A faint hum filled the air. "Mara," he whispered. Her reflection appeared. Not her standing behind him, her image inside the mirror. "Adrian," she said softly. He staggered back. "How? What is this? I told you not to look for me. Where are you?" "Between," she said. The mirror It's a convergence layer, an overlap between the real and the simulated. They built it years ago to preserve consciousness during the war. I was part of the recall program. They said I could visit the preserved worlds for short periods just to observe. But it became more than that. Adrian's mind reeled. You mean you've been entering simulations? She nodded. Every Wednesday, for 4 hours. At first it was just echoes of old lives. Then it started changing, learning, adapting. It's alive now. Adrian, he swallowed hard. And you kept going back. Tears glistened in her eyes. Because I found someone there. A version of me that never left the old world. She's more human than I am now. You're saying there's another you? There was, Mara whispered. But the boundaries collapsed. The system couldn't tell which of us belonged where. So now, when I return, she lifted her hand. It shimmered, phasing slightly. I bring pieces of her world with me. Adrian's voice broke. You're fading. I'm merging, she said. They warned me this would happen. But I couldn't stop. Every Wednesday I go back to see hurt, to see what I lost when the world rebuilt itself. Then let me help you, he pleaded. She smiled faintly. You can't. I'm already more data than flesh. The mirror pulsed again. Her image began to flicker. Mara, don't come after me this time, she said, her voice soft but urgent. If you follow, you won't return. Then she was gone. The mirror went still. Adrian stood there for a long time, staring at his own reflection. Then his wristwatch vibrated. The quantum tracker still pulsed, but now it was broadcasting 2 identical signals, one in the hotel, one back at their apartment. He ran. By the time he reached home, Mara was sitting at the dinner table. Her eyes looked the same, her voice the same, but something in her movements was wrong, too fluid, too deliberate. You came back, he said cautiously. Of course, she replied, smiling. Where else would I be? His watch buzzed again, one in front of him, one still at the Argentum. Mara, he whispered. Which one are you? She tilted her head. Does it matter? Before he could answer, every screen in the apartment lit up. The mirrored image of room 717 appeared, with another Mara staring back, terrified, pounding on invisible glass. Adrian, she screamed. That's not me. The Mara sitting at the table smiled as her eyes glowed silver. You shouldn't have come looking. The lights flickered. The walls shimmered. Reality twisted like glass under heat. When it cleared, the apartment was empty. Only 2 dinner plates sat untouched on the table. At exactly 8 p.m. every Wednesday, the building's network registered an anomaly, an echo of 2 biometric signatures, occupying the same coordinates for exactly 4 hours. Then both vanished, and every Thursday morning, the table was set again.